Everyone gets a 20% raise except you, my boss announced smugly across the table. Your performance doesn't justify it. The conference room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. My colleagues shifted uncomfortably, eyes fixed on their notepads. 3 years of skipped vacations, missed family dinners, and 4 a.m. client calls to Japan, all dismissed in one cruel sentence. I sat perfectly still, watching him tap his gold pen against the quarterly report I'd prepared. The same report showing I'd brought in 37% of our new business this year. I understand, I said quietly, gathering my papers. We'll revisit in 6 months, he added with that dismissive wave I'd grown to hate. Walking back to my desk, my phone buzzed. Hisashi from our Japanese client was texting about their planned contract expansion, the one that would double our revenue, the one my boss knew nothing about yet. A plan began forming in my mind. Sometimes the best response isn't an argument, it's a demonstration. And tomorrow's company-wide meeting would be the perfect stage for it. Before I share what happened next, I need you to understand something. I'm not someone who seeks revenge. But there comes a point when standing up for yourself becomes necessary, not just for your own dignity, but for everyone who might face the same treatment after you. Stay with me until the end, because what unfolded changed not just my career, but the entire company's future in ways no one could have predicted. My name is Avenya. At 32, I was the international account manager at a data analytics firm in Chicago. I joined the company after graduating with my MBA, determined to prove myself in an industry dominated by men 20 years my senior. I'm the daughter of Filipino immigrants who sacrificed everything for my education, teaching me that hard work always pays off, a belief my boss, Arendor, seemed determined to test. I'm naturally reserved, more comfortable analyzing spreadsheets than speaking in meetings. But beneath my quiet exterior runs a deep current of determination that my grandmother called tigas ng loob, toughness of spirit. It's what kept me going through 16-hour workdays and countless setbacks in an environment where being overlooked seemed to be my permanent condition. When I first joined the company, I admired Arendor. He appeared decisive, commanding respect with his booming voice and confident directives. He'd built the company from a small consultancy into a mid-sized firm with 50 employees. But as years passed, I noticed how he claimed credit for others' ideas, particularly mine. How he interrupted female employees but never male ones. How promotions went to those who mirrored his aggressive style, regardless of their actual contributions. The Japanese account had been my focus for 18 months. No one else wanted it. The time difference meant early mornings and late nights, plus there were cultural nuances that required patience and study. I learned basic Japanese, researched business etiquette, and slowly built trust with Hisashi's team at Sakura Technologies. What began as a modest consulting arrangement had grown into our largest potential international partnership. Each week, I sent Arendor detailed reports on my progress. Each week, they disappeared into what seemed like a void. In executive meetings, he would vaguely reference our work with the Japanese client, without acknowledging my specific contributions. When positive feedback came from Hisashi, Arendor would forward the emails to the executive team with a preface like, "Our approach is yielding results," conveniently removing my name from the exchange. Still, I persisted. My parents hadn't crossed an ocean and worked multiple jobs for me to give up because one man wouldn't recognize my value. The morning after being denied my raise, I arrived early. The office was empty, except for Nadia, our receptionist, who had worked at the company since its founding. With her silver-streaked hair and penetrating gaze, she missed nothing that happened within these walls. "Rough meeting yesterday?" she asked, sliding a cup of tea across her desk to me. I hesitated. Office politics weren't my strong suit, and complaining felt unprofessional. "I heard," she said simply, "Arendor was bragging to Keith about how he managed expectations with you." My fingers tightened around the warm cup. "Is that what he calls it?" Nadia looked over her reading glasses. "You know, I've been here 12 years. Seen a lot of talented people come and go. The ones who last aren't always the most skilled. They're the ones who learn to play the game." "I'm not interested in games," I said. "I just want my work to speak for itself." "How's that working out for you?" She raised an eyebrow. I had no answer. The company meeting today, she continued. Arendor's planning to showcase the Japanese account. 15 slides about his strategy that won them over. My stomach tightened. How do you know that? I proofread his presentations. Been doing it for years. She leaned forward. Ellie, not once does your name appear. I should have felt angry, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. The situation was so absurd it had crossed into clarity. What time did Hisashi say he'd call today? Nadia asked. I checked my calendar. Around 10:30. He wants to discuss the contract expansion before their board meeting tonight. Interesting, Nadia said. The company meeting starts at 10. We exchanged a look of perfect understanding. I'd better make sure the conference room speaker system is working properly, she said with the ghost of a smile. By 9:55, all 50 employees were filing into our main conference room. I took a seat along the wall rather than at the table, my phone placed visibly beside me. Arendor stood at the front, cycling through his presentation notes while our technical team adjusted the projector. Keith, Arendor's second-in-command and devoted follower, distributed printed copies of the quarterly report, my report, with my name removed from the cover. I watched my colleagues flip through the pages, stopping at the growth charts I had spent weekends perfecting. At exactly 10, Arendor cleared his throat. Let's get started. First, I want to congratulate everyone on a successful quarter. As you'll see on page 4, our growth has exceeded projections by 12%. He continued for 20 minutes, highlighting achievements across departments. When he reached the international section, he clicked to a slide showing the Japanese flag alongside our company logo. Now for our most exciting development. As many of you know, I've been cultivating a relationship with Sakura Technologies in Tokyo. I felt heat rise in my cheeks as several colleagues glanced my way, then quickly back to their notepads. Through careful, strategic planning, we've positioned ourselves to expand this relationship significantly. My approach has been to demonstrate our value incrementally, building trust through consistent delivery. My approach, my careful relationship building, my 4 a.m. calls and cultural research and language lessons. Arendor continued. I expect to finalize an expanded contract within the month, potentially doubling our current arrangement. Just as he clicked to the next slide, my phone lit up. The caller ID displayed Hisashi Takeda, Sakura Tech. Perfect timing. I raised my hand slightly. Arendor paused, irritation flashing across his face. Yes, Avenya? I'm sorry to interrupt, I said clearly. It's Hisashi from Sakura Technologies calling. Should I take it or call back later? The room fell silent. Arendor's expression flickered between annoyance and panic. We're in a meeting, he said stiffly. Of course. I'll message that you're unavailable to discuss the contract expansion. More silence. I could almost hear Arendor calculating the optics of dismissing a call from our biggest potential client in front of the entire company. No, he finally said. Take it, briefly. I answered the phone. Good morning, Hisashi. You're actually on speaker with our whole team during our company meeting. Ah, excellent timing. Hisashi's voice filled the room. I was calling with wonderful news I wanted to share with you first, but now everyone can hear. I caught Arendor's panicked expression. He clearly hadn't expected Hisashi to be so enthusiastic about speaking to me specifically. Our board met early this morning, Hisashi continued. We've decided to increase our contract to $12 million, 3 times the original amount we discussed. Your strategic approach and attention to our specific needs impressed everyone tremendously. The room went completely still. $12 million. It would be the largest contract in our company's history. That's wonderful news, I replied, maintaining professional composure while my heart raced. There's more, Hisashi said. As I mentioned in our private discussions last month, we've been looking for someone to head our new international division based in our Singapore office. The board has officially approved our offer to you. $300,000 annually plus relocation and benefits. We believe your vision aligns perfectly with our expansion goals. I watched Arendor's face drain of color as he gripped the edge of the podium. I'm honored by your offer, I said carefully. This actually comes at an interesting time. I hope that means you'll consider it seriously. Hisashi replied. Oh, and one more thing before I let you return to your meeting. We should mention that the acquisition will be finalized next week. Murmurs broke out across the room. Acquisition? No one had mentioned any acquisition. Acquisition? I asked, though I already suspected what was coming. Yes, our purchase of your company. Didn't your leadership team inform everyone? The paperwork is nearly complete. We're looking forward to restructuring the leadership with your guidance on who truly drives value. The room erupted in hushed conversations and shocked expressions. Arendor stood frozen, his presentation forgotten on the screen behind him. I believe this might be news to some of my colleagues, I said carefully. Perhaps we should discuss the details later today. Of course. I apologize if I've spoken out of turn. Please call me after your meeting to discuss next steps. Have a good day, everyone. The call ended, leaving a deafening silence in the conference room. Arendor cleared his throat. Let's take a 15-minute break, he announced, his voice strained. We'll resume with the marketing update afterward. As people filed out, buzzing with questions, Arendor approached me. My office. Now, he hissed. I followed him down the hallway, aware of eyes watching us go. Inside his office, he closed the door and turned to me. What acquisition? What job offer? What have you been discussing with them without authorization? I maintained my composure. Hisashi reached out to me directly last month about their interest in acquiring a controlling stake in our company. I forwarded you 3 emails about it. I also mentioned their interest in creating an international division during our strategy meeting 2 weeks ago. Arendor's face reddened. I don't recall any of this. I have the email thread saved, along with your replies saying you'd handle it at the executive level. As for the job offer, that was unexpected. I haven't given them an answer. He ran a hand through his hair, processing the implications. This is all moving too fast. We need to slow this down, renegotiate terms. The terms are quite favorable, I said. The valuation is 30% above market rate. I assumed you were pleased with the arrangement. We can't just let them take over. His voice rose. And we certainly can't have them restructuring leadership based on your opinions. I looked at him steadily. Yesterday, you told me my performance didn't justify a raise, despite bringing in nearly 40% of our new business. Today, our largest client offered me a position at 3 times my current salary because of that same performance. Which assessment do you think is more accurate? If you're enjoying this story so far, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Click the notification bell so you never miss our weekly stories of workplace justice and sweet, satisfying revenge. Our community thrives on sharing these moments when underestimated people finally get their due, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in Avenya's showdown. Arendor stared at me, his confidence visibly crumbling as the reality of his situation sank in. For the first time since I'd known him, he seemed at a loss for words. Look, he finally said, lowering his voice to a more conciliatory tone. Perhaps I was hasty yesterday. We could revisit your compensation package. A 25% raise instead of 20%, effective immediately. I studied the man who had dismissed my contributions for years. Now he was scrambling, attempting to salvage his position with money he'd denied me just 24 hours earlier. This isn't about the raise anymore, Arendor. Then what do you want? A promotion? A different title? Recognition. Respect. Things you can't suddenly offer when it's convenient. He leaned against his desk, attempting to regain composure. You don't understand the pressures of running a company like this. Sometimes difficult decisions. Save it, I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness. For 3 years, I've watched you take credit for others' work, not just mine. Devon developed the algorithm that attracted the Australian clients. Amara created the analytics dashboard everyone praises. Yet somehow, these accomplishments always become leadership initiatives in your presentations. His eyes narrowed. That's how business works. Everything ultimately reflects my leadership. And now your leadership has led us to an acquisition where the new owners value my input on restructuring. I let that sink in before continuing. They specifically asked for my assessment of our organizational strengths and weaknesses. The threat wasn't subtle. Arendor's fate potentially rested in my hands. You wouldn't sabotage your colleagues out of personal vendetta, he said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. I'd never harm this team. Unlike you, I value everyone's contributions. I moved toward the door. The meeting's about to resume. Shall we continue pretending nothing has changed? The remainder of the company meeting was a study in discomfort. Arendor attempted to proceed with the agenda, but questions about the acquisition dominated the discussion. With each inquiry, he deferred vaguely to ongoing negotiations while avoiding eye contact with me. By noon, the office was buzzing with speculation. My colleagues approached me cautiously, probing for information about Sakura Technologies and the potential restructuring. I answered honestly but carefully, conscious that my words carried new weight. Nadia caught me as I returned from lunch. Your office has been busy, she whispered, nodding toward my door. Sure enough, a line of anxious colleagues waited outside, each clutching folders or notepads, evidence of their contributions they feared had been overlooked. First was Devon, our algorithm specialist, who'd been passed over for promotion twice. I just wanted to remind you about the Australian project, he began tentatively. I have documentation of my development process if it's relevant to any discussions. After him came Amara, then Jesse, then Pavel, each recounting projects where their work had been absorbed into Arendor's narrative of success. With each conversation, the pattern became clearer. Talented people systematically denied recognition. At 3 o'clock, my phone rang again. Hisashi wanted to schedule a video call to discuss transition details. I reserved the small conference room, away from Arendor's office. On screen, Hisashi appeared with 2 Sakura executives I'd met during their visit last spring. After exchanging pleasantries, they outlined their vision for the acquisition. We value your company's technical expertise, Hisashi explained, but we've observed concerning leadership practices during our due diligence. What sort of practices? I asked, though I already knew. Credit concentration, decision bottlenecks, talent retention issues. Our research shows several key contributors left within the past 2 years, citing lack of recognition. I nodded. That aligns with my observations. We'd like you to prepare a talent assessment, identifying who truly drives innovation and client satisfaction. This will inform our restructuring decisions. He paused. Regardless of your decision about the Singapore position, we value your insight. The conversation continued for an hour, covering integration timelines and announcement protocols. By the end, I understood my unexpected power. I could shape the future of the company and the futures of everyone who worked there. Walking back to my office, I passed Arendor huddled with Keith and 2 other executives, their worried expressions telling me they were discussing damage control. They fell silent as I passed. My desk phone rang moments after I sat down. It was Arendor's assistant, requesting my presence in the executive conference room. When I arrived, only Arendor was there, sitting at the head of the table with a folder in front of him. Close the door, he said without looking up. I did, then remained standing. I've been reviewing your personnel file, he began, opening the folder. Your initial interview notes mention reluctance to assert herself in group settings and needs development in leadership presence. These concerns have persisted in your performance reviews. I almost laughed at the transparent attempt to undermine my confidence. Are those the same reviews where I exceeded every quantitative target? He ignored my question. The point is, Avenya, you lack the executive presence to guide a restructuring process. Your technical skills are valuable, but you don't understand the nuances of organizational dynamics. Is that why Sakura Technologies offered me an executive position? His jaw tightened. They don't know you like I do. They see quarterly results, not day-to-day limitations. Interesting perspective, I replied. What exactly did you call me here to discuss? He closed the folder and leaned forward. I'm offering you a deal. Support me during this transition. Emphasize my strategic vision to the acquisition team. In return, you'll receive the promotion to senior director you've wanted, plus the raise we discussed earlier. The proposal was so predictable, I almost felt disappointed. And if I decline, then I'll be forced to highlight certain performance inconsistencies in my handover reports. Your judgment calls on the Brazilian market entry, for instance, or your initial reluctance with the Japanese cultural training. Blackmail, thinly veiled as professional feedback. I remained silent, considering my response. Additionally, he continued, I've prepared an alternative acquisition proposal for the board, one that maintains our executive structure while still delivering shareholder value. You're assuming the board will choose your leadership over Sakura's offer. I founded this company, he said, voice rising slightly. The board respects my vision. I studied him, this man who had built something significant yet couldn't share credit for its success. There was something almost tragic in his desperation. I'll consider your proposal, I said finally. You have until tomorrow morning. The board meets at 11. I left without further comment, my mind already sorting through options. Back at my desk, I found a message from Hisashi requesting our talent assessment by the following afternoon. The timing wasn't coincidental. Sakura wanted my input before finalizing their approach with our board. That evening, I stayed late, reviewing 3 years of projects, team compositions, and results. The pattern was unmistakable. Our most successful initiatives came from collaborative teams that Arendor had minimal involvement with, yet he had positioned himself as the architect of each success. At 9, Nadia knocked on my door, coat already on. Still here? You should rest before tomorrow's chaos. Almost finished, I said, gesturing to my notes. She lingered in the doorway. You know, in 12 years, I've kept many secrets for Arendor. Professional discretion and all that. I looked up, sensing she had more to say. But there's something you should see before you make any decisions. She placed a flash drive on my desk. Board presentation drafts from the last 3 years. Notice how they evolve from initial submission to final version. How did you get these? I format all executive presentations. Always keep backups in case of technical issues. She gave me a meaningful look. Technical issues happen quite frequently around here. After she left, I plugged in the drive. The files showed a systematic pattern. Initial presentations credited team members by name, while final versions consolidated achievements under executive leadership initiatives. In some cases, entire slides featuring individual contributors were removed. Most damning were the track changes in the documents, with Arendor's user ID explicitly removing names and reassigning credit. One comment on a presentation about the Australian algorithm read, "Remove Devon's name. Position as executive strategy." It was nearly midnight when I finished my analysis. I had what I needed, not just for my own vindication, but for everyone whose contributions had been erased. The next morning, I arrived early, finding an email from Arendor reiterating his offer with additional pressure tactics. I didn't respond. Instead, I prepared 2 documents, my talent assessment for Sakura and a separate presentation for our board meeting. At 10:30, board members began arriving. I nodded politely as they passed, receiving curious looks in return. They'd all heard about yesterday's revelation, though none addressed it directly. At 10:55, Arendor intercepted me in the hallway. "Your decision?" he demanded. "I'll be presenting my perspective to the board," I said simply. His expression hardened. "Remember what we discussed. Actions have consequences." They certainly do. The boardroom fell silent as I entered behind Arendor. 12 board members sat around the table, with 3 Sakura representatives joining via video conference. I took a seat against the wall, deliberately positioning myself as an observer rather than a participant. Our board chair, Vivian, called the meeting to order. "As you're all aware, we've received an acquisition offer from Sakura Technologies. We're here to discuss its implications and determine our response." She nodded to Arendor. As CEO, Arendor will present his assessment and recommendation. He stood, projecting confidence as he distributed printed materials. "Thank you, Vivian. While this offer appears attractive on the surface, I have serious concerns about the proposed leadership restructuring. Our success stems from our current organizational structure, a structure I've carefully cultivated." For 30 minutes, he outlined his counterproposal, accepting Sakura's investment but maintaining the existing leadership team. He emphasized stability, continuity, and his personal relationships with key clients. "Questions?" Vivian asked when he finished. "Yes," said one board member. The Sakura offer specifically mentions concerns about credit concentration and talent retention. Could you address those? Arendor smiled dismissively. Creative professionals often desire more recognition than organizational realities allow. Every company balances individual ambitions with cohesive leadership. Our attrition rates are within industry norms. Vivian turned to the video screen. Hisashi, would you like to respond? Hisashi nodded. Our due diligence raised specific concerns about how contributions are recognized and rewarded. We believe the company's future growth depends on properly valuing its talent. That's why we requested Ms. Avenya's assessment. All eyes turned to me. Avenya, Vivian said, would you share your perspective? I stood, connecting my laptop to the projector. I've prepared a brief presentation analyzing our team structure and project outcomes. Arindor's expression shifted from confidence to alarm as my first slide appeared. Attribution analysis, project success factors, and credit distribution. For the next 20 minutes, I methodically presented data showing how our most successful projects correlated with collaborative leadership rather than top-down direction. I highlighted team members whose contributions had been systematically obscured in executive presentations. And finally, I said, reaching my conclusion, I'd like to address the question of executive credit appropriation. I displayed a series of before and after slides from Nadia's flash drive, showing Arendor's systematic removal of individual contributors' names. These tracked changes document a pattern of credit reassignment that affected at least 17 employees over 3 years. I explained. This pattern correlates directly with our increasing turnover rate among high performers. The room was absolutely still. Arendor stared at me with undisguised hatred. To be clear, I continued, I'm not suggesting our technical capabilities are anything but excellent. Our team is exceptional. But their continued motivation depends on a leadership structure that values their contributions. Vivian studied me carefully. What would you recommend, Avenya? A flatter organizational structure with distributed leadership responsibilities, team-based performance metrics rather than individual heroics, and most importantly, transparent attribution of ideas and innovations. I glanced at the video screen, where Hisashi nodded approvingly. Thank you, Vivian said. Arendor, would you like to respond? He stood slowly, his composure visibly strained. These selective examples don't reflect the full context of our operational decisions. Leadership sometimes requires difficult choices about attribution to maintain competitive positioning. I've always acted in the company's best interests. By taking credit for others' work? Asked a board member. By presenting a unified executive vision to clients and partners, he countered. The discussion continued for another hour, growing increasingly tense as board members questioned specific instances of credit appropriation. Throughout, Arendor maintained that his actions were standard executive practice, even as evidence mounted against him. Finally, Vivian called for a short break. As people filed out, Arendor approached me, speaking low enough that only I could hear. You've made a serious mistake. Even if they replace me, your reputation is finished. No one trusts a traitor. I met his gaze calmly. I'm not the one who betrayed this team, Arendor. When the meeting reconvened, Vivian announced their decision. They would accept Sakura's acquisition offer, including the leadership restructuring provisions. Arendor would transition to an advisory role during integration, with his long-term position to be determined. The following weeks transformed our company. Sakura appointed an interim leadership team that included me as International Strategy Director, a position I accepted instead of the Singapore role, choosing to remain with the team I'd grown to care about. Arendor cleared out his office on a Friday afternoon, avoiding eye contact with everyone. His legacy of intimidation dissolved quickly as people realized they could safely share ideas and claim rightful credit for their work. 3 months after the acquisition, we gathered for our quarterly review. Project teams proudly presented their own achievements, names prominently displayed on slides. Collaboration flourished as fear receded. Our turnover rate dropped to 0. After the meeting, Nadia found me in my new office. Not the corner suite Arendor had occupied, but a glass-walled space in the middle of our work area. Quite a change, she observed. People actually smile in the hallways now. Change was overdue, I said. I just wish it hadn't required such drama. She shook her head. Some lessons only come through consequences. Speaking of which, she handed me an industry newsletter, open to a small announcement. Arindor had accepted a strategic advisor position at a struggling startup, several steps down from his former status. The business world notices how you treat people, Nadia said. Eventually. That evening, I received an email from Hisashi with our latest client satisfaction scores, the highest in company history. Attached was a performance review praising our culture of recognition and authentic leadership. I forwarded it to the entire team with a simple note. This belongs to all of us. Because true leadership isn't about claiming credit. It's about creating space for everyone to shine. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had your contributions overlooked or witnessed someone else's work being claimed by a superior? How did you handle it? Our community thrives on these shared experiences of workplace justice and personal growth. Remember, recognition isn't just about ego. It's about creating environments where talent can flourish. Sometimes the most powerful response to being undervalued isn't just walking away, but helping build something better for everyone. Subscribe now for more stories of resilience, redemption, and the sweet satisfaction of earning your rightful place.